All right. So with us today is Sam Centellas. Sam is a former Ivy Tech employee, part of our community, has worked with La Casa de Amistad in South Bend for the last 8 years, which is a 41,000 square foot facility, making it the largest, most comprehensive, and best Latino immigrant focused center here in the Midwest. Sam's involvement ranges from economic development to leadership development of college students and community organizing. Sam was appointed by the mayor of South Bend as the commissioner to the Housing Authority and to the Diversity Utilization Board, helping develop minority and women-owned businesses, and served on the steering committee for the West Side Main Streets project. So I'll kick it over to Sam. Thank you so much for being here. And it's all yours.
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you for the invitation. I'll watch for you on if I need any like volume ups, downs, things like that, but I appreciate your time. It's super intimidating, right? The president of the whole system is here. We actually got to have lunch at one of the leadership graduation programs right when you started. So it's kind of cool to connect again. My local chancellor here of the South Bend region of Ivy Tech is here as well. I see Dorana hanging out there. Thank you for joining us. And just folks I've known from all different walks of life. But I will say the most intimidating of all of them is that my mom and dad are watching from Florida and they've never seen this presentation. So I will start off right away with saying that's intimidating, but welcome to Beverly and Daniel Centellas down in Florida. So I'm gonna screen share here and I'm gonna start my presentation. I'll give a little background on kind of how this came up and why. The title in a second, but I'll do a little more of an introduction of myself. So my name's Sam. I'm a Bolivian immigrant, moved to the States when I was 7. I'll talk a little bit about my educational background, but I've spent the last 8 years, literally to the day. Today's actually my last day at La Casa, working at La Casa de Amistad in South Bend, Indiana, our local immigrant and Latino advocacy organization here. And I've had a great run doing this work and I've absolutely loved it. And I'll talk about that passion side of my work and how that's transitioning in my life at the end of my presentation here. And I don't know why my stuff has stopped clicking. There we go. I'm actually an engineer by education. So I have a bachelor's degree. I studied engineering. I was an automotive engineer and loved that work. And then I went and got an education degree and was an education administrator. I moved to South Bend 13 years ago to work at IUSB, spent 2 years at Ivy Tech. And I think when the waiting room stuff pops up, it doesn't allow me to click through my slides. There we go. And then I've always been an activist, so involved in Latino advocacy. I was part of a Latino fraternity in college and remained engaged with that to today, serving on our education foundation for that. But always was drawn to that work. And that's what drew me to working at La Casa de Amistad. I was actually working at Ivy Tech when somebody asked if I would want to work at La Casa and run a nonprofit organization. I had no experience doing that. And I took a big leap of faith to do that. I can't start any presentation without talking about my 3 cute kids. These photos are a little dated, but my oldest there in the center, Novalia, is actually a college student now. That was her prom photo. And then my little guy right there, he's actually playing Pop Warner football and excited about that. He likes to be the villain and everything. So we'll see how he turns out. And then my youngest, Marisa, is actually now a 2nd grader and is our bilingual program here at our local schools. And I absolutely love them. They keep me busy and they keep me grounded in my work. So I keep getting my click here going. There we go. So Abilitas Hands. I mentioned earlier, I'm a Bolivian immigrant. I was born in Santa Cruz, Bolivia. And I'll weave that into my story here as I'll say it. But I mentioned I worked at IU South Bend when I first moved here to the South Bend area. And it was in 2008 that I was actually asked to speak at the Latino graduation ceremony on campus. And their theme for the program was that education is our foundation. And so they asked would I like keynote that, and I do public speaking. So I was like, yeah, that sounds great. And I went about trying to write a speech. And so, but then I had to call them back and I said, I don't know if I can do that. My abuelita had passed recently and I said, I don't think education's our foundation. I actually think family is our foundation and that education is a family value. And luckily in my family, education was a major family value. And so I said, if I could change the theme and say, family is our foundation, I will still do the speech. And of course, it was like 2 days before the event, so they had to say yes. So I probably could have talked about whatever I wanted. But I changed the theme and I went about kind of figuring out how I was going to do that. And so today I'm going to tell you the story of my abuelita, in the hopes that, like all of our decisions, the way you think about the future, you'll remember those who sacrificed for those that come after you, like my abuelita did. So family is our foundation. My abuelita, she believed in respect. She was a small Bolivian woman raised in the mountains of Bolivia. She stood a humble 4'10". On a good day, she raised 5 sons, which feared her like I've never really seen somebody fear someone who's smaller than they are. And it's one of those when someone fears somebody out of respect because they respected her so much. She taught them all the value of hard work. She taught them the value of education. She taught them the value of caring for others. Her mother had died when she was young, and because of that, she never got to complete as much of her education as she would have liked. And I think that's why, she ultimately, really drove her boys. She had 5 sons to going into education and to going to college, and most of them went to college. So my abuelita was a hard worker, and I remember a story that she told me once, that growing up, and in the mountains of Bolivia, it's a hard place to live, right? The ground's hard, you work hard, you toil. And one time there was a businessman was visiting the area, and he was tall and handsome and good looking. And she said that one time when she had the opportunity to kind of bump into him, that when he went to shake her hand, that she curtsied and put her hands behind him. And not because that was a Bolivian tradition to do so, but because she was embarrassed about how hard her hands were, as someone who'd always had to work with her hands. And she told that story to me when she was actually visiting here in the States, and I was, in high school and thinking about college, and she had said, like, I want you to grow up and not have hands like mine. I want you to work, I want you to have a professional career. I want you to go to college. I want you to have the life that I didn't have. So family's our foundation. She sacrificed, knowing that she wanted me to grow up like somebody that she looked up to. And that's why family's our foundation, and education is a family value. My abuelita believed in seizing the opportunity. She raised her sons to get an education. Both my parents have college degrees. My parents decided to come to the United States in the mid 1980s, at a time when times were tough in Bolivia. And my parents knew that there would be opportunity here in the United States for us. My mom's family was in Saginaw, Michigan. We moved there, where we knew that the sacrifices of not just that my parents made, which I respect a lot, but that abuelita had to make, right? She had to let her son go. I'm sure my abuelita had, tears of sadness when her son left and her grandkids left. But I also am positive she had tears of thankfulness, knowing that the opportunities that would ally us. I know I cried, probably for different reasons, but that transition and that sacrifice was big, and it's something that helps us seize opportunity. Family is our foundation. So my abuelita believed in education, like I said. She believed that education creates potential opportunity. Education's like a pair of glasses that helps you see better. It helps you see in ways that you probably couldn't before without that education. It's that vision, those advanced degrees, those potential careers that create that opportunity for us. My abuelita was humble. She ended up having about 20 grandkids. They were spread on several continents all over the world. But her sacrifices for her sons and for others is what created opportunity. So here's my first little quick break as we talk about families, our foundation. And I haven't even been advancing my slides here because I've been forgetting. I'm going to do that while you guys, I'm going to give you guys some homework. I want all of our families, whether you're an immigrant, whether you're not, whoever you grew up, there's somebody in your family that you probably owe where you are right now in life. And that might be your abuelita. It could be your uncle. It could be your big brother. It could be your little sister. But what I'd like is for some folks to put in the chat or to just write down for yourself. If you don't feel comfortable putting in the chat, put the name of that person and why they mean a lot to you, and try to keep that short, right? But I'm going to give you guys a homework here while I catch up on my slides, because the other one I'm going to tell you is my quick other 4 things while you write those things. is that my abuelita gave me a list of things. My dad's going to be like, what do you mean $3 million? I'm going to get to that. But she taught me that a family is our foundation. She gave me a value on education, a value on opportunity, like I talked about with the lenses and the glasses and the focus. She taught me a value on my history, and I'll end with that today. And she gave me $3 million, and I'll get to that in a second. Oh, I keep getting dinged out. I can't click. There we go. So that's what you're all writing right now is your foundation. Who's this family person in your? I see some great stuff getting written in the chat here. It looks like I can't go grab the chat to look at it. There we go. Okay, I got it now. All right, there we are. Yeah, so people are writing their mom, sometimes just writing a name. Taught me the importance of education, independence, right? Our parents teach us that. Sometimes by letting us fail, right? My tata. I always love when people write their nicknames too. To work hard and did that himself. My mom, my godmother. Right, my mom, right, moved us out of a bad environment. Very good. I actually just this morning was at my doctor, and we were talking about the impact that immigrants have made in South Bend and what he's seen over the last 20 years. How oftentimes immigrants, because of the huge risk that they take in moving their whole family, being nomadic, kind of puts you in an environment where you have to succeed, where you look and you strive and you push. Or you didn't make that huge transition in your life to just be status quo, right? To just keep doing the thing. My grandma. I probably just read these all day. These are awesome. And normally pre-COVID, when I would present this to a group, I would have people pair up and share with each other, and then maybe have a few people share out. And it's powerful to hear people, say and write these things down. And, and I'm loving all the mother ones. As a dad, I'm always like, dads don't always get enough credit. But it is, I see, there we go. My grandfather risked everything. So especially on Hispanic Heritage Month, especially today as we kick the month off, so Hispanic Heritage Month was started under President Johnson as a week, and then President Reagan made it a month. And so it's cool, especially the next couple of days here when we have a lot of independence celebrations in Latin America. It is where we get to kind of remember where we're from and the sacrifices that people made for us to get here. Very cool. All right. Feel free to keep writing some of those. I'm going to keep rolling on my stuff. There's a couple. Yeah, older brothers. I think sometimes, families. Yeah, my pops. I'll leave my quote up there for a second as I'm still reading these. All right. So the second value is I talk about, education, that my abuelita. And one of my favorite things, I was I went to school to be an engineer, and I was, a self-professed car guy, and I loved cars. And my abuelita would always try to engage in those things with me. I still remember when they visited in the mid-1990s, car stuff was big. My abuelita was helping me work on my first car that I would have. And my abuelita, I still to this day think about it. She would always try to connect with me on cars. And she said, I don't know anything about cars. But she told me I wanted to be a car designer. And she had told me that, but when you grow up and design cars, I want you to design happy cars. And I was like, what? And she goes, if you look at the front of a car, and now all of you will probably do this and think about your car that way or others. She goes, some cars look happy and some cars look angry. And she's talking about like the headlights and grill in the front. And she's like, I want you to design happy cars. And it was just her way of connecting with me on something. And I still to this day, like look at, Lexuses always look angry, and certain other cars look happy, right? I'm not picking on you if you drive a Lexus, but just saying it looks angry. And so it's one of those things that was the way that she connected to me and encouraged me, right, to be an engineer someday, to go and live that dream. So now I'd like to see a couple of you, especially students, but feel free for the administrators as well that are here. And if you're in one of the watch parties, so if you're at a watch party and you can't type in the chat, you could share this with somebody next to you. But what are your dreams? What is something you dream about? I think my abuelita was always good at asking us things like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And a lot of people don't get asked that a lot or get encouraged to reach those things. Or oftentimes if we're, from low income communities or immigrant communities or disadvantaged school corporations that unfortunately just don't have the resources to help you dream, your dreams can sometimes get squished. And so I think it's really important, and this is what I like to do in this presentation, and you could do it here in the chat or share it with somebody at one of your watch parties. I think like my Fort Wayne peeps are over there having a watch party. Maybe mention to the person next to you, yeah, what's your dream? What's your thing? Yeah, having my own construction company. Everybody wants to be their own boss, right? Because you like to think you'd be a good boss to yourself, but you never know. Oh, writing a book. I know it's on my list too, and I haven't got there yet. I won't pick on you, Durana, don't worry. Yeah, building generational wealth and finding ways to do that. Opening an empanada stand, yes. Perfecting that. We have just a great empanada place here in South Bend that I love, Chimichurri. I know I'm gonna make people, it's lunchtime, I'm gonna make y'all hungry. You're gonna make me hungry. I can't eat before I speak. And the first time I ever did this presentation outside of like, I used South Bend when I started it, was actually at Virginia Tech. And there was a student who's, I forget what they were studying, but he wanted to build underwater communities. And like, they have like a program or something that was really, I was like, what, that is some crazy stuff. I hope he's still working on that. I don't know. Yeah, you know what? That's a phenomenal dream, Monique, right? Raising my kids to be happy and kind people. So some things don't have to be about money and what you do every day, but also that your lifestyle can help provide that, right? That I'm in a place where I'm able to make sure my kids, grow up to be good people, and that my education and my work and everything feeds that. That is super cool. Building a mentoring brand. Yeah, so being an entrepreneur. So I didn't mention this in my intro, but I've been with La Casa for 8 years. Today's my last day. And I'm moving on to an organization called CDFI Friendly. And our main initial focus is going to be helping minority and women-owned business startups into getting them the financing that they need to start their business. And that's part of this generational wealth piece or just living your dream, right? It doesn't have to be about making a lot of money, but it can be about like, I really want to do this. And whether that's turning your side hustle into a real hustle or just keeping your side hustle something that's fun for you and that you're making some money to support your family. That's one of the things that I'm going to be doing with the new company we're starting. Opening a farm where chemo and people with long-term illnesses can grow their own food. That's cool. Yeah, see, so this is what I'm talking about, right? I'm going to move on before we get too far here. But this is the kind of cool stuff that sometimes our ancestors couldn't have imagined half of this stuff. They couldn't have imagined us owning our own companies, doing all these different things. I'm helping a guy right now that's building a big indoor farm. And so like things like that are, opportunities that of dreams that we can only really reach because of people who've made sacrifices for us, right? We've got to stand on the shoulders of others. I always like to weave in a couple quotes in there. So work hard for every opportunity. I always talk about our immigration story. So my family came here for Christmas in 1984 for a family visit. I had packed a bag for 10 days to kiss my abuelita goodbye, played with my dog Tony, and we left for Christmas. During that trip, a little bit after Christmas, our parents woke us up one day and said, we're not going back. We would become Americans at that point. And, I lived with my grandparents for a while that didn't speak any Spanish. We made a hard transition, but we took that opportunity. The opportunity was there to say, it'll be better here. And all four of my parents' kids, my siblings and I all went to college. We're all successful. Older brother's a professor. Younger brother's a businessman. My sister's a nurse and actually owns her own business as well. I keep bouncing around on careers, but I've made them all work. And I'll talk a little bit about that at the end as well. But opportunity was there. Opportunity was there for our family. And this is one of my favorite quotes. I think about opportunity. And this is one of those where I always loved kind of weaving in the Latino Hispanic experiences and we're not all immigrants too, right? So that's the one, maybe I'll also weave this in since this is during Hispanic Heritage Month, that, that we can remember that, not all Latino, we're not monolithic, right? We're not all the same. Some of us were immigrants from 20 years ago. Some of us immigrated last week. Some of us were born in this country. Some of us were born on this land before it was a country. And so that we are a very mixed and diverse demographic. But I always love this quote, the opportunity is missed by most people because it's dressed in overalls and looks like work. It's also a good kind of quote when you talk about judging people and what their backgrounds are or what they do. And so I'll talk a little bit about cool opportunities, right? That my abuelita got to have. So that's my grandparents right there, my abuelitos. My abuelito and abuelita on their last trip to the United States together. My abuelito would pass actually shortly after these photos were taken, but they got to meet my oldest, who's now a college student. They got to visit Chicago, and I remember my abuelito, it's kind of funny, you think about people wanting to visit Chicago for a million reasons, and he wanted to see Al Capone's city. I never really labeled Chicago as Al Capone city, but that's what they wanted to see, and they got to visit. He loved to go fishing. That's my dad and my abuelito fishing up North Michigan, and that's a big fish. And they more than anything love to hear about our college experiences. So those are my abuelitos when they were here visiting my younger brother at Michigan State. So those are the botanical gardens there near Michigan State that they wanted to visit, and they're both wearing Spartan caps. As a devout Notre Dame fan now, I don't want to make a comment about the baseball caps. But they were always really, really proud to hear about, what we had done, what we were up to, and everything and how that connected back to, what we came to the States to do. My abuelito always liked to collect. I would either give them or send them, but they would always want copies of your business cards. Like, I want to see a business card, right? Because you're a professional and you have your business card and your name's on something and there's a title there and it sounds important. And that meant a lot. That meant a lot to them. And then I am going to skip value history because I'm going to get to that at the end. And I am going to jump to what I normally put at the end, but talking about the $3 million. And some of you might have either seen this before or heard me talk about lifetime earnings. And for those of you that mentioned generational wealth. So if you look up lifetime earnings based on education, you'll see that me as a master's degree educated person, my lifetime earnings are going to be around $3.5 million. For all of you who are students at Ivy Tech, right, the biggest actually boost and bang for your buck is an associate's degree for that range of how much you can make over your lifetime. So just enrolling and finishing at Ivy Tech means, you're setting your family up to be in a better position than maybe you were before by engaging. And so, right, part of when I like to weave these pieces together is think about what that dream is, what that person is who sacrificed for you to get that dream, that it doesn't have to all be for it. It's not all for naught, right? It has to be for something successful. And right, and I say you already made it to 1 million. A high school graduate over their lifetime will earn about $1 million. And so you could triple that by getting a college education. So my abuelita gave me that, right? She wasn't able to write me a check when she passed away, and I didn't get a large estate in the will. But she gave me the opportunity, the chance, and the drive to be able to get that. And so I will get back to my last lesson that my abuelita taught me is the value of your history. And so my parents actually had retired and moved to Bolivia, and we're actually helped my abuelita live with them. And she'd been sick for a long time. And one day we got the call. And I was lucky enough that my younger brother and I were able to meet up in Miami and fly down to Bolivia before my abuelita passed. I don't know if she knew we were coming or not, but she held on. And we got there. And if you've ever been by someone's house or place when they're passing, whether that's in a hospital or tradition for Bolivia was you pass at home, right? You don't want to pass in a hospital. And she was at my parents' home. And there was a line of people, right? And when someone's about to pass, people come and sit next to their bedside. And what do? they hold their hand. And I don't know why, but I remembered right away back to the story she told me of how embarrassed she was of her hands. And I thought, here's a couple of guys that flew from the States. There were family calling doctors. My cousin lived in Europe. She couldn't make it. She's a dentist. An educated group of people all were coming to pay homage to her and were touching her hands. And so that's when she, no, I messed up my slides. But that's when she taught me her last lesson. And she taught it to me on accident. And generally the best lessons are taught not on purpose, as I found as someone who's mentored people for a long time in my life, is that she was ashamed of something that made her who she was. And I know I grew up the same way sometimes, right? I was ashamed of being poor, and we grew up, you know, without a lot of things. But those things helped make me who I am today. And I think oftentimes, and to tie this to Hispanic Heritage Month, and specifically when we think about immigrants, oftentimes we're kind of taught to be ashamed of who we are and where we were from. Immigrants in this country have almost always been looked down on, right? They called the Polish dumb and the Italians criminals and the Irish drunks, and every immigrant culture in this country has been told to be ashamed of who they are. Low-income people have been taught to not talk about where they're from or where they are, how poor they were. And when I went to college, I joined a fraternity, and I pretended I was more than I was, this kind of poor immigrant kid from Saginaw, Michigan. And so when she passed, she taught me to be proud, because people came there to pay homage to her and her hands, because her work created opportunities for other people. And so in closing today, part of what I wanted to leave with everybody is to think about how your opportunity creates opportunities for others, how your sacrifices create opportunities for other people, but never forget to look back and thank the people who had the opportunity to help you. I probably never did that enough with my abuelita. Plus, we lived in different countries, and I know it's hard for us as immigrants. It's easier now than it was 10 years ago. We can FaceTime and chat like that. But never be ashamed, as it says there, right? Never be ashamed of where you came from. It made you who you are, and be proud of that. And it'll make your kids, it'll make your relatives, it'll make the people after you to come out and continue to achieve and do great things. So there's my lessons for everybody. I want to say thank you so much. I wanted to leave some good time here at the end for conversation. I will talk a little bit about just kind of where I'm at today. So my opportunity, I love to show, I've never been one that would show photos of like famous people I've gotten to meet, but I do. That's like, I just popped up. That's me in the RBG. That's me and Rita Moreno, and EGOT. That's my friend Anderson Cooper over there. That's me with Dolores Huerta. My biggest claim to fame is that when I met Dolores Huerta, and I had arranged a meeting with her, and when I got to meet Dolores Huerta, she goes, "Oh, you're Sam. I heard about you." And I was like, "What?" I mean, she just heard about me like 10 seconds before I met her, but still, I was like, that is crazy cool. Obviously, Mayor Pete Buttigieg here in South Bend, worked with him a lot. Actually, my mom and dad are on this chat. They actually got to have lunch with him when they were here visiting before he became too famous and moved to DC. But the sacrifices of my abuelita for my work and my family and everything that's happened in my life have paid off, because I was able to go work hard to go get those things. And I've just been blessed to be able to do this work, to work with others. And I want to, you know, as I can say, gracias to my abuelita and her hands. And then since my parents are here, which has probably been why this has been more emotional for me, thank you, Mom and Dad, for everything you did for me as well in my life. So that's me. That is my contact information. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, wherever. Drop in, say hello. And I kind of wanted to just, we can hang out here for a little bit. I can take some questions. You can, I think Amanda said you can raise your hand or do whatever you'd like to do to get attention. You can write something in the chat. I'll answer questions. But thank you for being here for this Hispanic Heritage Month kickoff presentation, and for giving me your undivided. You guys have been very engaged on the chat here, which I love. It's the hard part about Zoom speaking, is sometimes you're just like crickets. So thank you, everybody. And yeah, let's take some questions. I gotta drink some water.
First, let me say, Sam, thank you so much for sharing your story. I'm over here like, there must be dust in the air in South Bend and in Indianapolis. I'm not sure what's happening here, but it is just so powerful to hear the connection between your story and connection to your ancestors and your grandmother. So we really appreciate you doing that and talking about that. As we are giving folks an opportunity, again, if you want to speak, just go ahead and raise your hand or somehow indicate to me that you would like to unmute yourself. But I would like to talk about one thing that you mentioned, Sam, was family as a foundation versus education as a foundation. I thought that was really powerful. And so can you kind of expand a little bit more on that and why you feel that way and kind of how that's shown up for you and how you kind of arrived to that idea?
Yeah, and so I would say, well, two things. One, and I also want to describe family differently too, right? So family doesn't have to be your siblings and your parents, right? It's your tribe. I think one of the new terms over the last few years has been like my tribe, right? And so I think who your tribe is part of that. And so I would say that, and it's about as humans, we like naturally need to interact with other people. And we want to find people who are like us. And I think we also want to grow from people. We should want to grow from people who are not like us. But that's why I think family is the foundation, because education to me is like a skill. Education is like learning something. It's like picking up, like I mentioned, it's like a tool. So I would always kind of relate education, and I don't wear glasses, so I can't speak to it, but everybody in my family does, right? Putting on a pair of glasses changes how you see things. And so I see education like that. It's like, now I see the world just a little bit differently. And I joke that, I have an engineering degree, but I run a nonprofit. But the way that I run my nonprofit has a lot to do with my engineering glasses. And I look at things analytically. Those that have worked with me can always see like my reports to be like, yeah, an engineer wrote that one, especially because of all the grammatical mistakes. So that's why I see the difference between, like, I think education is like a tool. And it's also where I really struggle in the education world as well, where we see education has become a commodity that's like bought and sold. And so I think if we need to go back to rephrasing it as like education is something you learn because it makes your life better, versus like your family foundation is who supports you. And I would expand that out to say like your tribe.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Anybody, any questions, comments? Want to make sure we give some space to our participants and give you all a chance to connect with Sam if you would like.
I'm loving all the comments too. So actually the lake that my grandpa caught that fish in was in Gladwin, Michigan. Somebody made a Gladwin comment. So it's kind of funny, small world. And for those that don't know, I'm not a dropout. I'm just taking my time. I'm very close to finishing my automotive degree at Ivy Tech. I'm going to start classes again in October. I took a break. I just couldn't do this September time. But I am also a very, very proud Ivy Tech student. I've been getting those advising emails about signing up for classes. I'm on it, y'all. I'm on it.
I love that. I love that. All right, looks like we've got a hand raised here with Jessica.
Yes. Hi, Sam. I just had a quick question. What motivated you to get into activism for the Latino community? And are you interested in maybe perhaps other communities to get involved with so that we can all start becoming more as a one unit, and getting to know each other better in that way?
Yeah, so I mean that's a big one to unpack. I'll give like a short answer, and I would love to connect more directly. And I think as a Latino immigrant, I've always wanted to advocate, and I think part of what I do locally when I talk, I actually do talks with Juan, one of my staff members, who's actually taking over for me now as the director. Where we would both talk about our immigrant experiences, that he came when he was 5 and I came when I was 7. But he was undocumented and I was a US citizen because my mom is Beverly Coates from Saginaw, Michigan. And so the only difference in our background was that my dad married a woman with red hair and green eyes from Saginaw and his dad didn't. And his opportunities in life were very different from mine because of that one thing in our past. And so that always just drove me to advocate, because I was one of the counter examples of kind of what was happening. So it just gave me a natural story. And I think it's also why I always say, as much as in any fight you appreciate allies that step forward to help a fight along, you know, there's no one that understands it like someone who's been a part of it. And so that's part of it. The other piece, advocacy around other related issues, whether it's other immigrants, refugees, low income communities. It's part of what I'm trying to do with the new startup I've joined, is, you know, help fund minority and women-owned businesses in ways that they're not being helped right now in traditional finance sense. And so that's expanding outside of my normal realm. And part of it, when I made the announcement that I was leaving, as I said, you know, for years while I worked at La Casa, I said, somebody needs to do something about this. And my experience was mostly framed around Latino entrepreneurs, but in general. And so now we're a local startup, and we're going to work to try to do something about it. So I would also then layer on, without once again making the very complex question too short of an answer, but layer on, right, the whole intersectionality piece about like different groups not competing with each other over what's going on. And it can get, you know, hard because, you know, not all groups agree on all things all the time. And it's the same thing. Like, I feel like oftentimes in politics, we just get so discombobulated, disagreeing about different things, but things that we do agree on, we don't ever talk about to figure out how we fix that. And so definitely we need more groups to kind of come together to work together.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Excellent question. I see one of my Slippery Rock alums. Yay.
We have another hand here, Jose.
Yes, saludos, Sam. I came to the US when I was 10 years old. I now live in Goshen. And Goshen is going to celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month this Friday for the first time in its history. And kind of going along with the question that was raised before me, I know why Hispanics want to celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month and the importance of it. But how can we, the non-Latinos, the non-Hispanics, why is this important? And the reason I raised that question is because people in Goshen are asking the same question. Why the non-Latinos, why the African-American, the Anglo community should be concerned and celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month?
Yeah, so also bigger question, but I think in general, we should all learn to celebrate each other's traditions without feeling like it's competitive. Like I will say, like, I'll use this example. When I was in college, we were competitive, right? We were like, if they spent more money on the Black History Month speaker than they spent on the Hispanic Heritage Month speaker, we were mad, right? Versus like, yo, they got to bring so-and-so, that's awesome. You know, and so I think like that's part of what we were taught to like be mad about it. How come they could afford that and all we got was a mariachi band at noon on Friday, right? So whereas I think we all got to help advocate for each other. We got to not try to take away like strides other people have made. And I think people see it that way. And so I use a couple examples. One, on a flip side, and I always stay away from politics. I've worked in nonprofit for too long. I know I can't. But the other side is like, there's some people who are going to complain about like, why we got to celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month. Like those people are generally just racist, and don't worry about that, right? Because we're not going to make them happy. Because no matter how we articulate it, right, they're not going to be happy with the situation. But I would say what I think Latino immigrants, especially as like the current kind of, I don't want to say like, I mean, the current wave of immigrants that tend to kind of get the negative attention. You know, if they're having a Polish festival somewhere, like everybody just thinks that's like super cool and doesn't think that is anti-American, right? But you do a Latino thing, people think like, why they got to be anti-American? Why? We're not being anti-American, like we're celebrating our thing. It doesn't mean we don't like your thing anymore. And so I use that example too. Like if there was a Polish fest or an Italian thing or whatever, like we've had things in communities where like a family flying a Mexican flag has something happen to their house. But if their neighbor had a, you know, Italian flag out, especially here in South Bend, right? Like if it's Irish stuff, like everyone's super cool about it. Like St. Patrick's Day, there's no problem, you know? And so I have a different problem with most St. Patrick's Day celebrations, but I won't talk about that. You know, but from like a cultural, actual celebration of our people, I use that as a reference to say like, we're celebrating, you know, like in Elkhart, we still celebrate the traditions of the Amish, right? People love that stuff. And that goes back to like their culture and but even their language, right? And so that, and then other cultures. So I think that, so it's multiple things. So I'll rewind. I always talk about, right, that we can learn to celebrate other people's things without it having to grade our thing. I think that, we can kind of compare how we celebrate other cultures as well. So that, and then third, like some racist people are just going to be racist and there's not a lot you can do about it. And don't let them drag you down, because I also find oftentimes people let the focus, like the focus go on that 5% that drive you crazy. Spend your time on the other percent of people who are ready to hang out with you and are going to come to the festival. And I might actually come. I was going to be out of town on Friday, but I think I might actually make it out to Goshen. So my plans have changed for the weekend. So
Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you, Jose.
All right, it looks like we have Graciela.
Hey, Sam. Thank you for sharing your presentation. My name is Graciela Spencer, and I work for Ivy Tech in Columbus. And my job at the campus is to help Latino students to succeed in college. And I have a question for you. So what recommendations you have for Latino students who don't have a strong family foundation?
Yeah, so I mean, any student that comes from has some type of disadvantagement, right? So that whether that's low income, doesn't have the family support structures, and I even rope in other groups too, right? Thinking about students that might have learning challenges, right? So any student that is somehow disadvantaged versus, like, I would say I was very advantaged when I went away to college. My family didn't have money, but my parents were educated. They were supporting me. They were helping, right? A lot of other students will have other things that are slowing them down. And so the college just has to come up with supports that are very clearly targeted to helping, and being direct about that. So saying like, hey, we know some of you might not have parents that speak English and can help you. We might have some parents that don't want, especially oftentimes, for like, whether it's different cultural norms, whether it's daughters going to college or sons studying a certain thing or whatever, right? Sometimes there's cultural context or perceptions, right? All these reasons why a student might not be supported well. Be clear about like, we're a safe place. We're a place where you can come and bring that. We're a place where you can unload baggage on, maybe your parents aren't documented, maybe you aren't, and come tell me things. Like, I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to help you. That's the biggest thing, is students have a lot of, and it's the same thing like I thought, right? Like people are judging me because I don't have this, or I didn't do that, or whatever. And so low income, minority, immigrant students, people who have some type of disadvantagement feel like everybody else has a leg up on them, and they don't want to share what their disadvantage is, versus like, come tell me what you need help with. I'm here to help you, and to be really clear about that. The other one that I try to advertise a lot for places, and I've seen varied success at different campuses, or not success, but use of that, is being free to communicate in Spanish a little bit, or even just being more casual with your language, or whether that's some Spanglish or however, try to speak to the student, or even just using slang, right? So not even just in terms of the Latino side, like using slang in the way you talk, versus like all your stuff always having to look all prim and proper and whatever. So like, speak to the person that you're trying to connect with, not speak in the way that it would connect to you. And that goes a long way.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you. Thanks for the good work you're doing down south. I always forget how long Indiana is.
All right, another question from the chat. How can folks who don't identify as Hispanic, Latino support the community and serve as allies?
Yeah, I think one, so I always talk about street cred. So, and finding some ways to get some street cred. And I see my man Joe nodding his head. So he earned his street cred when he was at IUSB. He was great to work with, and glad to see at Ivy Tech now. But find ways that, like, because you can't come out as an ally to people, right? Like, you can't be like, hey, yo, I'm down for the cause. What's up? Because they'll be like, no, he's definitely not down for the cause. And so what it is like, connect with one person, connect with a couple students, and word will spread, right? So it's about finding a couple relationships, a couple students you can help, a couple ways that then you could be like, you know, when you're talking to somebody, to be like, hey, I was talking to Sam, you know, it works over at La Casa, and wondering if there's some ways that we can connect on things that you need help with here at Ivy Tech. Because then I'll be like, oh, well, if he knows or she knows that person and they're friends, then the street cred transfers a little, right? And so then they'll be like, I think I can trust her to tell her these things, or I know I can talk to him about this. So that helps. So make these connections, right? Find people that you've connected with, that you're comfortable with talking about, and then slowly they'll help you spread your street cred. Because you can't tell people you got street cred, other people have to tell them for you. And so find ways to help build your network of people who are telling others that you got street cred. I like the nodding heads, like, yes, I'm good. Okay, all right, I'm there.
All right, I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions. Not sure if we've heard from our students. If we've got students on the call, we'd love to hear from you. Give some space to our students.
Somebody from one of those watch parties out there.
Yeah.
I've never spoken at an event where there's watch parties. I feel like I'm like super famous.
All right. Well, if we don't have any other more questions or
I'll do
comments.
before you do a wrap. Let me do one thing. I had a student here mention, or somebody here mention that they did a service project with La Casa years ago while they were at another university out in Pennsylvania. They came to South Bend to do a service project here for a week. One thing I would say in terms of getting engaged with the community, and it ties back to the street cred question, is volunteering in neighborhoods and communities like this to learn and engage and understand. The other one that I would say as a shameless plug for La Casa de Amistad, but any type of nonprofit center, whether it's Latino serving or otherwise, whether it's Boys and Girls Club, you name it. If you want to network in a community, the #1 place to be is at a nonprofit. I know every single millionaire in town. I know where they live because I raise money from them. That's my job. You volunteer with me, you get your name known, you get connected to those people. And you're also doing a good thing, right? But volunteering is a great way to like learn, understand, connect. And then from a networking angle, like people that are connected to nonprofits are connected everywhere. So it's a great opportunity of things to do, just to learn about yourself, to learn about a community, to connect and do a good thing for the world. All those things are really great. And my last joke is that you don't have to speak Spanish to volunteer at La Casa. You can come and help us rake our leaves in English, and we won't turn you away. But any center the same way, right? So you don't have to speak any language or know something to come. Just sign up and say, I'm here to learn and I'm here to help, and they will put you to work.
Awesome, wonderful. Thanks, Sam. All right, so if there are no other questions, we'll go ahead and wrap up our time today. So thank you so much again, Sam Centellas, for spending time with us, sharing your story. I think one of the things that's so powerful, I'm getting messages and Teams and on my phone and all over of saying how powerful it is. And I think for me, it was a lesson in vulnerability. And even in this virtual space, hearing you share such a vulnerable story allowed us to connect. And so I thank you for sharing that and allowing us to hold that story with you. This is, again, the first in our series of Heritage Month Speaker Series. We will have another one for LGBTQ History Month in October and another speaker in November for Native American Heritage Month. So be on the lookout. Thanks again for joining us today. And special shout out again to all of those that are having watch parties and Sam's parents that are logging in from Florida. We really appreciate that. Thank you all for taking your time to kick off Hispanic Heritage Month with us and learn a little bit more about the community. As always, if you need anything, the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Belonging is here in Systems Office, so feel free to reach out. We're happy to support our students, faculty, and staff in any way that we can. So thank you again and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks, Sam.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks. Have a great day.